to BSI, the podcast with Benny Stillhammer, Dowsy and Iko Para. Enjoy!
Like that's like the stupidest idea ever. So by that afternoon, I Googled Major League Soccer.
So your exit with Red Bull, what was it? What you pictured?
Welcome to BSI, the podcast. Today we got Dax McCarty filling in for Ike Opara, as I think Ike is like trying to negotiate better terms of his deal here with BSI, the podcast, with the higher ups. Maybe Nino's having a conversation with him, but I think he'll be back next week. But Dax, thanks for coming on, bro.
My pleasure, man. Ike might be back unless I take his job.
Yeah, that's true as well. But we wanted to bring you on because we're having Luis Robles. You played with him for a long time. I know Sal did as well. So we got to have someone that can, really give him some tough questions. And I think you'll be able to do that.
I hope so. He's going to plead the fifth one way or another.
He has to. I wanted to mention, thank you obviously to all the Patreon members that are becoming a part. We've got a growing group there. And I wanted to mention that it was a lot of fun doing the Zoom party with all the players and the coaches that came on. And I think a lot of people thought that was pretty cool. We started the planning video that some people loved, and it's like things that we don't even realize that people love, but they love it. And, Luke Terry actually wrote, that this is fantastic. As a huge U.S. soccer fan and lover of podcasts, I can't even begin to emphasize how much I love this. So, people are really interested in the things that we're doing. And for me, that's like, the coolest thing about this, to actually connect with these guys and see what they want to hear and be able to provide that content. So I know you had a Q&A as well, Sal.
Yeah, I did a little personalized Zoom call with some of our Patreon followers, subscribers, whatever you want to call them, MJ and Drew, and it was just us three, and literally they were asking away questions, and I was just kind of getting advice on things that they would like to see on our podcast. But it was a lot of fun, and it was pretty cool insight.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing is like how interactive the Patreon system is, and so it's been really cool to get to know these people that listen to our podcast and get their insight and be able to provide them with cool content. So if you guys are into that stuff, make sure you join up, and we're having fun with it. I think that's it. And then should we get our guest on right now?
Let's get him on.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Welcome, Luis Robles, to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Good, dude. Good. So you know how this works. We've got the quick hitters to get you warmed up. We'll talk about your career, things that you've done, the highs and the lows. I think a lot of Red Bull fans will be listening in as we got Luis, Dax, and Sal here today, and so that should be interesting. And then we'll get into the plead the fifths, and we'll let your good buddy Dax take over as he's filling in for Ike again, week 2 now without Ike. So thanks, Dax, for
get well soon, Ike. Get well soon.
I'm going to try my best to just be as much like Ike as I can. Okay. But these are all coming from Ike. Most of them. I didn't have my hand in any of these.
Okay. All right.
You're just a messenger, right?
I totally believe that.
I am a vessel. That's all I am.
Yeah, that's the same thing Sash preached last week to Jovan Karofsky. So
yeah, but that was Sasha's boss, so he had to say that.
All right, fair enough. Let's get going. All right, first question. Your biggest individual career achievement. So I've written some down, and if there's any other ones that I missed, you can add that. But 17 plus year career, 183 consecutive league starts, which is the record for MLS, or MLS goalkeeper of the year in 2015.
I'm going to lean towards MLS goalkeeper of the year because I know that was a really tight race that year. I think I was up against Bill Hamid and maybe actually I can't remember the third one, but I won the player vote, and to me that was like massive for the players to vote me as a top goalkeeper that year was very validating for me.
Dude, that was a massive year. That was my best year too. So we peaked at the same time.
Was it? No, Benny, you were 14. Wasn't your year 14?
No, I was 15, bro. The year I was with you,
I was 14. You had a great year.
I had a decent year, but not 2015.
Weren't you like MVP candidate?
That was 15.
Really?
Me, Javinko, and
14
Kai.
was like Lee
No.
and Robbie
No.
Keane.
Was
14
it?
was
14
14 was Lee, Robbie Keane, and Obafemi.
And Obafemi.
Yeah.
Hey, so I took my award out of because since I just moved into this house, I took my award out of the box for like almost the first time, and I dropped it.
No,
Yeah.
you broke it?
Yeah, it's cracked. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, my
Dude,
God.
MLS will send you another one.
Well,
Yeah,
they
get
really-
MLS to send you a new one, dude.
Why not?
Oh, it's definitely hacked across. The
Is
side.
it? I can't remember. Was it like I can't remember what I got for
It's
like
that
best
Tiffany
11.
and Co. like huge crystal diamond.
I think I might have that either stored or maybe at my parents' house. I don't even know where that is. Anyways,
Glad you
All
guys
right.
cherish
Choose
those.
I cherish the memories more than the actual things that we received. So
Seriously.
Hey, Luis, we were gonna throw another one in there, but we figured it would be too easy. How many Humanitarian of the Year awards have you won?
I think they retired it at Red Bull. I think it's actually just called Luis Robles of the Year.
like the Landon Donovan MVP award is
Yeah.
now the
No, but
Luis
I've
Robles
never
Humanitarian of the
actually
Year award.
won- I've never won MLS Humanitarian of the Year. And it's
Really?
something
Really?
Deep down, I've always wanted to win. I would never confess that, but
I think you tried the
I
hardest
think-
for that award out of any of them, to be honest.
no. But I feel like after the first one, I was like, okay, like this is kind of embarrassing. Like if I'm up for it every year, I should win one.
You got to be a better person, bro.
I know, dude.
Luis, you're never gonna beat cancer survivor and just general great human Matt Lamson. It's just not gonna happen.
That's probably true. And you know what? I don't mind. I don't mind.
Shout out to Matt Lamson on that one.
He's an incredible guy.
All right. This next question is a tough one, I think. So obviously Red Bulls have had some really good years, especially in the regular season, some big disappointments in the playoffs. And this comes up from one of our Patreon account members, Christian Daniel. What is the worst playoff loss in terms of like most painful that
What year?
you've been through? Yeah. Which
15.
year?
15.
15?
15 for me. When I look back at all those years at Red Bull was the year. Jesse and I still talk about it. I just recently last week, Damien Pernell, we were texting and we looked at 15. 8 seconds changed everything. 8 seconds in Columbus. The
That was
worst
Columbus
part
game,
about
right?
it, Benny, the worst part is we practiced the play all week. This is what these guys are going to do
Off the kickoff.
off the kickoff. And we still didn't execute.
That's when you like overtrain for stuff. You like it's almost like you like have it so much in your head that you forget like how to actually play soccer.
We
Who
forgot
was
that they're going to do
Was
it.
it Kai
Right?
playing up top?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kai headed it down to, I believe, Miram.
No, I went to like
Like
two
to
people.
somebody else, and
It
then
went to two
Miram
people,
got it.
yeah. It went Kai to Ethan Finley to Miram. I think.
Miram.
Let Ethan Finley win a header.
No,
I mean,
it went down to the left,
okay.
and he
Yeah, that's what I
don't
thought.
know. Some
But that was
Or down to
preceded
the
by a huge event. Damien Pernell got hurt in DC. I mean, that guy
Yeah.
was on fire that year. He was
Right.
the
Yeah.
best defender that year.
Luis, I'm surprised that you were so quick to have 2015 like no problem. Dude, there were so many painful ones. I mean, they're all painful, but
I just thought that
Dax,
that
what was
good.
yours?
I mean, I
I was thinking about this, and 2015 was brutal. 2014 was especially brutal as well. But for me, Luis, I don't know if you remember.
But which one? The loss at home, New England?
Yeah, New England. I'm saying the series.
Yeah, the
series,
series, right?
Series. But for me, dude, the craziest one and the one that's still pretty painful is 2012 against DC United. Do you remember like how crazy that series was?
I know, but I was new. I wasn't as invested. You know, I was just happy to be on the
Dude,
field.
that one was so painful. You had like we had a
Ken
good team.
Cooper made the PK.
That was
Then
wild.
it's called back. And
Not
then
just that.
goes
Hold on.
big.
It was Hurricane Sandy, so we were supposed to play at home first and in
Yeah.
DC second, but they had to switch the venues.
Mhm.
So then we went down there, got a good result at DC, and then they had to play at Red Bull for the second leg, which then got snowed out. The second leg got
I
snowed
remember
out.
shoveling the snow. With
And we had to play the next day, and then we had like the opportunity to go up 1-0. Bill Hamid got the red card. Kenny Cooper scores, and then they called it back for encroachment. Thierry and Tim both were encroaching. They called it back, which you guys know basically never happened before VAR. So they called the penalty back. He retook it. Joe Willis, my current teammate now in Nashville, saved it. And then we were like, okay, fine. It's 0-0, but they're down a man. We're at home.
It was like the 70th minute, right? Like that was
Yeah,
still quite a
dude,
time.
5 minutes later, Rafa Marquez kicks the shit out of Chris Pontius and gets a second yellow for no reason. So he gets a red card. So now we're back to even. They score in the last minute. It was, dude, that one for me was just devastating.
That's funny because
That seems
I don't share the
devastating
same
because of what happened in the game. But
Yeah.
like, if you look over the course of the season, like, I don't know, Luis, like, what was the best Red Bull team you had? I mean, it also could have been what, 7 or was it 18?
I think the most talented team was probably 16, right?
16.
And you can make the case for 18, right? Just because we
Yeah, you guys had the most points.
Yeah. But I just felt like 15 was the most complete team. I felt like we were the best team in the league. And not only did we show that by winning the Supporter Shield, but I just felt like with our philosophy, our tactics, it was fresh, it was different, refined in a way. I just felt like that was a team from the front to the back, and the guys on the bench. We were as complete as I remember being at Red Bull.
It's funny because like each of you guys have a different, reason why in a different game. I'm sure Sal has, thoughts of it as well. And I spoke to Sasha actually last night about this, and he said that 15 was tough, but it wasn't the most painful for him, and kind of similar to what you said about 12. I think it was his first year there, right? 15.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, it was
his was 16 because he was 16. Like out for the half against Montreal, and then I think they blocked his PK.
Exactly, that's what he said. So for him, that was the first game, right? It wasn't in the conference finals or anything, but it was the first game. And
no, we were down. We were down 1-0,
and he missed a pen.
Yeah,
right. Like 10 minutes in, I
he had like a bloody nose.
But then they like broke his jaw or something.
Yeah, broke his nose. He said
we played a man down the entire first half.
He said they played down for like 15 minutes before he got back on.
He couldn't stop swallowing blood. It was
wild. That's what he said.
It changed.
That was weird. I remember that actually. Wow. Yeah, I had to play emergency left back. I started that game. I hadn't been starting up until then. Yeah, that was crazy because we had lost 1-0 in Montreal, right?
What's that?
We lost 1-0 in Montreal.
We had one shot. I couldn't block it.
We lost 1-0 in Montreal.
And Bradley had a chance at the end to score too. I remember.
No, we dominated them. We thoroughly dominated them.
I could say this, and I think, Sal, you were there on the team, but you didn't play that game. But we had a pretty equally disappointing loss to you guys in 2014 when we played. I mean, obviously our team was kind of beat up.
There.
Oh yeah, you guys beat us at home. I was injured that game. I had like messed up my ankle pretty bad, and I was like so frustrated watching us lose 2-0 that game.
But Benny, remember like the circumstances. If we lost that game, our season was done.
Yeah, you weren't in the playoffs.
We had to stay 4 more days in Kansas City to play you guys.
That's right.
If we won, we both fly back to New Jersey to play.
Yep. And you guys did win, and then we played over there, and our team was like shot to shit. Like we had so many injuries, and I remember when have Sporting ever sat back, and like that's what we had to do that game. We sat back, we got a goal. I passed one to Dom, and he finished it, and we were like, dude, we're gonna do this, like we haven't played that well, but we've played, like tactically well, and we're gonna do this. And then we give up 2 kind of mistakey goals in the last like 10 minutes of the game. I think one was like the game winner was Bradley Wright like headed one. The ball went up in the air for 10 miles and Kronberg like hesitated to come out or stay in his goal, and it went in. So yeah, it was disappointing. But
I will say that on all those Red Bull teams, Luis, I always felt like in every playoff series, like we were the favorite. I always felt like we had the better team, and every single time we somehow managed to screw it up. And it was like, every time sitting in the locker room after one of those losses, you're just sitting there like with your mind blown, like what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And I just wish people understood like that, dude, we gave it our all. Like, I don't know. I didn't work out. Like we left everything. That team was an honest team. Like we gave everything, and it just for whatever reason.
And it kind of sucks because that's all the fans remember. They don't remember all the good years from 12 to now, they just remember.
Hey, you guys from 12 to like present time, like Red Bulls have been one of the most consistent regular season teams in the league. Just you haven't won an MLS Cup, and that's like when everybody puts holds their.
And
hat
I get it, but put things in perspective. All
right, moving on. I know a lot of sore subjects between you three on that question, but we'll move on. This is another Patreon member question. Robert Brown asked this one. And do you have a most memorable save? That's got to be a hard question. Most memorable. One specific save.
Most memorable.
Or maybe one that meant the most. I don't know if that's an easy one.
I mean, the one that gets played all the time is that double save in Portland. And the reason I remember it is actually not even the save. The reason I remember is because one, I went to school at the University of Portland, so it was such a cool feeling to be back. And I think I bought like 80 tickets for that game, and so for them to be there and we won 2-0, I think it was like my 100th consecutive start for the club, which is in the MLS record. But then as soon as I come in, Dax lets me know that my team that I picked for Survivor was out. And
for football,
my quarterback was done for the season. I think I had Tony Romo. He was done for the season. So yeah, it is all linked to that save. You know?
Did your game win bonus offset all the 80 tickets you had to pay for?
I don't know how I paid for it. I mean, it was just one of those. It's just one of those things that people started asking. I couldn't say no just because.
I remember that. I remember that save. That was
I don't know how
special.
Your forearm didn't just snap. I remember that save. You were
guy came in. Who was it
there.
that came in like super hard to? Borchers. That's right. That's right.
That was a great save.
All right. Last question for the quick hitters, and this is one for you to talk well about your new team there. One player that has surprised you at Inter Miami.
I mean, I was asked this recently, and no one's really surprised me. I've always thought from a distance that they're really good players, and so every time we sign someone, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like, we're an expansion team, we're going to need that guy. So whether it was Will Trapp or Ramon Torres, like these are the guys that we need to be successful as an expansion team. But I couldn't come up with a good answer then. I still can't come up with a good answer. I'm not going to say quality because I always thought he was a good goalkeeper, John McCarthy. But competing against him,
John McCarthy's over there.
Yeah. You thought he was
the guy that wears the thing.
Job. Yes.
He gave himself a concussion, and we already talked about this one time on the show. I think with Mo. Mm-hmm. This guy, when he came in against us in Open Cup final to play the Pens, and I'm like, Mo, how do you take like goalkeeper of the year, I don't know, 2017, Andre Blake out to put a dude that, fine, he might be really good at Pens, but he gave himself a concussion once by throwing a ball out and throwing it so hard that he landed on his head on the ground.
Story. I've never heard this story. But
you can find the clip. It's insanity. He had to come off the field.
Let me finish. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
So competing against him, you would think he's a total nut. Right? Like, I don't know.
Most goalies are, and I've said this before. But.
Probably, yes. And he's just like a super chill, cool dude. Like,
really?
So if anything, that's been surprising. And we've got some decent banter, the goalkeepers, just with like competitions, because our goalkeeper coach is a total legend. Like, he scored 19 goals in the Argentina First Division, and no matter what game we play, he's just so good at it. And so he's partnered with John, and they destroy me and the rookie. But recently we've been on a bit of a win streak, and John really pours it on. He's actually great banter.
Luis, isn't John McCarthy the keeper who it was one of the Open Cups with Red Bull? We went to penalties with Philly
15.
and like made a couple saves and
15.
Yes, that's the one. I just told the same story. It was the same year, probably.
It was the same year. It was the same year.
We had something like 80 crosses.
That game was
7 shots. He saved the most ridiculous shots, and then they won in shootout.
And I think we were up a man too. I could have sworn.
And we were up a man, and they had one shot on goal, and I couldn't save it. This is like a recurring theme here. At 1-1, go to shootout. I saved PK.
So John McCarthy, the most surprising player at Inter Miami so far. Because he's not a nut job, and he's like actually chill.
Dude, he's like mad chill, like super cool dude.
All right. Well, you've got your warm up out of the way now. You've done your quick hitters. Now we're getting into the interview portion. So first question, you started your professional career. Actually, one question before we start that. This is like just for me. When you were at University of Portland, did you play your freshman year?
No, I redshirted.
So I didn't score on you, did I?
Where were you at? You were a walk-on at UCLA?
I was a walk-on at UCLA, 2003. My very first goal of college was against University of Portland at UCLA. But it wasn't against you. I didn't think it was.
Well, what year was that?
2003.
No, that was against me.
Yeah, because he's 84.
The game that we won 2-0?
Yeah, because I graduated in 2002, so that means my freshman year in college was
02, 03.
Was your coach Fitzgerald?
Yeah.
Yeah, he scored against me.
The 2-0 game?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not think it was you. I got to go back. I still have that tape somewhere.
You probably saw like
the first or second goal.
I scored the first goal, and then Matt Taylor scored the second.
Okay. The guy was probably like 50 pounds heavier than Luis. That's probably why you thought it was somebody else.
Hey, guys, if there's one thing about quarantine that's worked out for me, it's my weight. I'm under 200 for the first time since college.
Wow.
Oh, that's the opposite for me. My weight is going up with quarantine. So, all right, let's go to the interview portion now. First question is you got drafted in MLS, but ended up going to Germany. It's a little bit similar to me. I didn't get drafted, but I went to Germany as well. Why did you turn down MLS? Why did you want to go to Germany? And tell me the story about, signing in Germany.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange story, and there's no real reason why it should have worked out the way that it did. About a week before the draft, I started getting contact from a German agent, and he started throwing out all these teams that said they're going to put me on trial, and so for 3 or 4 days, he really had me like on a string. Like, oh man, I'm going to go to Schalke, I'm going to go to Hamburg, I'm going to go to these places on trial. And then the day before the draft, he disappeared. Like I emailed him, I texted him, I couldn't get a hold of him.
The agents are the best.
Yeah. So then he already had my eyes like wide open to the possibility of going over there. And so a team called me. I don't want to say the team. A team called me at the end of the first round and said, hey, we're going to take you at the beginning of the second. And I don't know why, but I said, I'm going to Germany. Inexplicably, I just said, yeah, like I'm going to Germany. And it caught me off guard because I was sleeping. It was like West Coast and the draft was going on. And I wake up for the phone call. The team says, we're going to take you with the pick in the second round. And I was like, yeah, I just want you to know like straight up that I'm going to Germany. And they said, oh, we didn't know that. I said, yeah. Okay. So they hung
Who's your
up.
agent? I don't really have one right now. I just,
yeah.
He disappeared.
Yeah, I know. So then another team called me in the second round and said that we heard you're going to Europe. And say, I mean, that's the plan. I'm going to Europe. And they said, well, we think we're going to take you with our pick. They didn't take me. In the third round, another team called. Finally, DC called. And they say, hey, we heard you're going to Germany. We're going to take you anyways. And I said, okay, that's fine. And it was something about being selected when it like hit me. It felt like a ton of bricks. Like there was all this pressure all of a sudden to be committed to that. And so then the next day I was golfing with my principal, and this was a real low, actually at that time. He offered me a substitute job at the school.
Wait, who golfs with their principal from school?
Luis.
Yes.
Luis
This is high school principal?
High school principal. So we were golfing, and my phone rings, and it's the agent. He says, hey, I have a ticket for you. You're flying out tomorrow morning. And so again, without any warning, I go home, I pack my bags. I really
trusted this guy.
The only reason I trusted him is because he at the time was the agent for my roommate in college. He took him to Millwall. And so at least someone could vouch for him, but I've never met him. And when I arrived in Germany, it was the first time that I met him. And so what ended up happening is I was supposed to go on trial at East Germany. Right. And I don't know if you've heard about East Germany. You were at Hamburg, you were at Hanover. So, it's just a little different.
Yeah.
Right. The mentality is some of it hasn't transitioned to modern day.
Correct.
And so he really started to think about it. I was like, maybe East Germany may not be best for you. But in the meantime, why don't you just go and train to get the jet lag off with this local team? So the local team ended up being FC Kaiserslautern, which is a big club in Germany, a very traditional club. And I was with the second team, and about 30 minutes in, a couple of characters showed up on the sideline. They were watching, and by the end of the training session, it turns out it was the first team coach. He said, we'd like you to stay for a few more days if that's okay with you. And I said, absolutely, that'd be great. I trained with the first team for 3 days. And which is really interesting is I'm an acquired taste, right? So I'm not the type of guy that shows up and wows you. First off, because I'm a goalie and I'm barely 6 feet. And second off, I deal with anxiety. It's not as if I can just go into a situation and be completely fearless. And so the surprising thing is over those 2 days, I was actually quite good. And good enough that I got a second team contract. And at that point, it seemed like that's where my path was taking me was soccer in Germany.
Nice. Who was the team that you were going to trial for in East Germany?
Karl Zeiss Jena.
Oh, I remember them. I played against them when I played with the Hamburg Reserves when I was there. So
Yeah,
I remember
so
their
it was probably
stadium.
Like third league, right? You were
they
probably
were in the third league.
Yes,
they were in the third league. I remember their stadium. Actually, I think their stadium was actually decent.
Yeah, no, it's actually really nice. It's completely open, but the way that it's set up, there's just such a cool traditional feel to it.
Yeah, cool.
Hey, Luis,
right.
I think I Wikipedia'd you earlier, and apparently you were teammates with Kevin Trapp over in Germany. The goalkeeper that played for PSG.
He was my backup. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And what happened, dude? You could have been at PSG.
He was your backup. How did this happen?
He was 18. He's
Still 18, dude. 18 feels like, I mean, Pulisic's what, 13?
Yeah.
Are we but yeah, so Germany, you stayed for how long?
6 years.
6 years, dude.
Yeah.
And you played for Kaiserslautern for 4 years?
Yeah. So 4.5 years at FC Ka, and then
Karlsruhe?
I was at Karlsruhe.
And that, were they in the second division?
But all the whole time I was there, they're in the second division.
So when Kaiserslautern, when you guys promoted, right?
Yeah. So that was my last year there.
So what happened there?
They offered me a deal, but I just that was the tough part, is Kevin Trout was behind me. So when we got promoted, they offered me a deal to go to the first league. Toby Sipple had a really good year. He's still playing. And then the real tough part is being in Germany, and the two goalkeepers that are sort of bookmarked or sandwiched in between were youth national team keepers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they really, really hold their keepers there to high regard.
Florian Fromlovitz was the other one.
Yeah, Florian Fromlovitz.
Wow, I played with him in Hanover
forever. Yeah, he was there as well, and he was a U21 national keeper. So I just saw like that there were going to be limited opportunities. I think looking back, there would have been more opportunities than I thought, but I just wanted to apply my own trade, and so that's why I went to Kasse and had an opportunity to start there. And actually, in fairness to the circumstance, I was doing quite well. It was a coaching change that started my demise in Germany, but I mean,
I think we can all. I know, Dax. I know you didn't play over there, but in Europe, it's when a coach trusts you and believes in you, and he leaves for whatever reason, you got to prove it all over again. It's not easy for sure. It's like a mental grind. So,
but I imagine, especially like being an American over there, like you automatically every time there's a coaching change, like this is just what I picture. Like you automatically go straight to the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, and there's a real pride in Germany with their goalkeepers, and with their goalkeeper coach being the way that he is at the national team, he had a lot of influence throughout the league, and so he was constantly pushing this idea that young Germans need to be playing. But it happened twice to me. So I had a really good year in 2009. That's when I got called in. Went to Confederation Cup with the national team in Benny.
Yeah.
But during that time, something happened with my coach, and the president of the club fired him. So then they brought in a new guy, and he was the U21 German national team coach.
Yeah.
And so I left the season as a starter, and we almost got promoted that year. I came back in preseason, and I was automatically the number 2. It wasn't even an open competition.
Yeah, I've always thought. I mean,
that's the way it is. You just have to navigate it.
I think the biggest thing for me, and maybe it's a little bit different as a goalkeeper, but as a field player, until you're an established player in whatever league you're playing in, whenever there's and you're a foreigner, whenever there's a change in coach, I think you're I don't know if you go to the bottom of the totem pole, but you definitely have to prove yourself all over again. And guys that, for whatever reason, I mean, if you're playing in Germany, the German guys, they want to see them succeed, right? Because that'll benefit them, their league, the national team and all that stuff. So yeah, for sure. You have to kind of, you got to prove it that you're more than just their equal in order to, play again. So
yeah, and our team was really struggling at Kasse, but I was playing really well, and I was starting to get some looks and some interesting phone calls. And this new guy comes in, and he makes one change, and it was he made one change, and he didn't announce it until the day of the game. So that started a downward spiral for me, and I think I went through some dark days, which I'm sure you guys can all attest to. But I think in the end, it was really still the right choice, because it allowed me in so many ways personally to grow and to develop into the person I am now.
Yeah. All right, let's get into coming to Red Bull. Not your time at Red Bull yet, because I know there was also, some funny stories in terms of after you stopped with Karlsruhe.
My career has been.
Tell us about your real estate job and calling MLS execs by
Luis. How I did not know
rotary
about
phone.
Yeah, how I didn't know about this real estate article that Benny sent me.
You could have asked Luis for some tips.
It gets glorified a little bit, so I'll just give you the straight of it. So we moved back July 4th. We had offers in Scandinavia. We had offers in second and third division Germany. My wife was 7 months pregnant, but the real problem, or the real thing that we had to consider, is my dad had double pneumonia. We thought he was going to pass. And then her dad had advanced form of oral cancer. It was stage 4. They operated. He was in chemo. And so we thought, okay, we're going to have, and we had just lost the baby the year before, in the second trimester. So it was our first experience being pregnant, going through the miscarriage. Kara was by herself in Germany, and though she managed, because she's just a really strong character, we were thinking, you know what, like we should be home now. I think when we really evaluate what's going on in our family's life, it's the right time to go home. And so even though the offers were there, they weren't so enticing that I'd want to stay. And we'd started speaking with MLS. And I know that for sure, Benny, for sure, Sal, when you try to make that transition coming back, it is the wild, wild west, dude. You don't know what's going on. Like one day it's this, one day it's this team. You're not sure what mechanism you're supposed to use to get back in. And unfortunately for me, there was this allocation draft that really was putting the brakes on anything when it came to MLS.
So why was it that you were allocation?
I played one national.
Because you played one national team game, right?
And unfortunately, the game was in a tournament. It wasn't like an exhibition game.
Okay, so I played in one game before I came to the MLS, but it was an exhibition, or it was a.
That's
friendly.
why you could go to the weighted lottery.
So I did a lottery. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing it was so stupid because I'm not a national team player. Like I shouldn't be in this pool. And yet they weren't willing to skirt the rules for me. And I just like, it was one game and I wasn't even good. Like, so I'm not with the national team. And so they wouldn't change it. And my agent disappeared again. So there's a recurring theme. We moved back to the United States on July 4th. And for 2 weeks, I can't get a hold of the guy. At that point, I'm going crazy. I'm just sitting at home watching TV.
Welcome to my life, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, bro. Okay. What shows are you into? Like, what are you watching?
No. Finish your story. We'll get into that later.
So I'm watching $1 Million Listing like every single day, right? And I'm telling my wife, like, I could do this. And so it turns out my future brother-in-law, he's a realtor in San Diego, at the time was working for a realtor in Sierra Vista, my hometown. And he was going on a missions trip. So he was gone for 2 weeks. And he was a glorified errand boy. He was the guy that nails the for sale signs in and then puts like the sold sign on there. I'm like, whatever. Talk to your boss. Like, I'll do your job. It will just get me out of the house. And so that's what happened. And after 2 weeks, I was developing a decent little feel for it. And the guy was impressed with what's going on. So he offered me a job. And I came back and I told my wife, like, hey, the guy offered me a job. I think I want to do it. And she was just like, yeah, no chance. Like, that's never going to happen. What do you mean? Like, I think this is a real opportunity. And she says, I just don't want it to be 2 years down the road and you're kicking yourself for just letting it go. And the reason I say that is because up until that point, not only did my agent disappear, but I started calling MLS teams. And they said, like, we can't talk to you. Like, you have to, your agent's got to call the league office, has got to talk to someone at the league office. And so every door that I pushed on seemed to be closed. And finally, she just sort of gave me this deal. She said, by my sister's wedding, August 11th, if nothing comes about, you have my blessing, you can go and choose whatever other career you want to do. And so nothing was working. And actually on my brother's birthday, August 1st, she said, why don't you just like Google Major League Soccer? And I'm like, come on, I can't do that. Like, that's like the stupidest idea ever. So by that afternoon, I Googled Major League Soccer and I called the switchboard and I talked to the lady and I tried to explain my situation and she transferred me to someone and it didn't work out. They transferred me to someone else. And finally, by maybe the third or fourth transfer, I'm talking to Ali Curtis. And he knows exactly who I am. He knows exactly my situation. And by the end of that day, we negotiate a contract. And he's telling me, and the thing that I really appreciate about Ali, and even while he was our boss at Red Bull, is he's very direct. Whether or not you can handle his personality is your own thing, but you appreciate how direct he is and forthcoming. And he said, honestly, I don't think you're going to get selected. Like, I don't think a team's going to pick you. So we actually need to negotiate a second contract, because what's going to happen is you're going to go through the allocation. No one's going to take you. So we're going to give you an even worse contract and you're going to get selected in the waiver draft. So on August 8th, we go through the allocation. He calls me. And says, "Okay, we're starting the allocation. It works." We send out an email. Whatever team wants you emails me back, and then we look at the listing. But I'm going to be honest with you. I probably won't talk to you until tomorrow because we'll do the waiver draft then. I was like, okay, whatever.
At least he's not a he's a real optimist.
Like when I called him, he like picked up. So 5 minutes later, he calls me and he says, like, I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised. I talked to 3 teams that were really interested in you, and none of them wanted to take you during allocation. And New York Red Bull selected you, and they weren't one of the 3 teams. And so then at that point, I was like, wow, okay, so we're going to New York. And the best part about all of it was, with my wife being 7 months pregnant, I was prepared to pay for a pregnancy because we went to try to get health insurance through the state and we got rejected. And so at that moment, even if they cut me, they had to pay for our pregnancy.
So it was all worth it.
It was all worth it. I mean, honestly, to me, that was like the biggest part, is I wasn't going to have to pay $25,000 for a pregnancy.
Yeah, that's
huge.
Dude.
I can relate to not having health insurance right now during a pandemic, by the way.
Yeah, but shouldn't you have Cobra?
Yeah, it only costs $18,000 for Cobra every month.
Not 18,000, but at this point, I don't think it's worth it. But anyways, I'm not going to get into my Cobra stories, but
he just wrapped his kids up in bubble wrap and lets them go play.
Yeah. It's funny though, that I say like almost 50% of the players that we've interviewed have at one point in their career said they've almost retired or quit or whatever.
Yeah, it's a tough journey, man.
It's crazy, dude. It's like, it's good for fans to like see how hard the journey is.
Luis, do you think, and I think I know what the answer is, but do you think if you had never reached out and called MLS and Googled MLS that you would be playing soccer right now?
No, because I'd already reached out to Nike. I interned while I was there, while I was at the University of Portland, and I still had a really good contact there. And he was all for me finding a job or getting a job at Nike. And then the other person I reached out to was a guy in Denver, and he just has a very successful company, and he always offered. He's always offered me great advice and offered me an opportunity to work there. But he also said that. So yes, my wife said like Google MLS soccer, and that was part of it. But then he also like solidified that. It's like, you know what, you have nothing to lose. And still to this day, like he's such a great, not only a friend, but just supporter of my career. And he's always given me advice like that. So I was ready to move on, and I wasn't too bothered by it. Who knows? I mean, it's easy to say that now, but maybe 6 months into it, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need to go back and try out for anything.
So obviously you had a great time at Red Bull. You know, talk about when you first started playing, you know, with Hans, like him giving you that chance, and then obviously leading into the Ironman situation.
Yeah. I mean, I'll preface it by saying the Ironman situation is not anything you could ever plan on doing. Like that, it's just
you didn't plan to play that many straight games.
No. Trust me, that was so out of left field. I mean, I'm grateful for all of it. I don't necessarily identify with it. I identify more with the success that we had, the different teams that won the Shields. But I mean, come on, stop it. Anyways, so when I get there, I knew right away that there was a good chance I wouldn't stay there. I had heard already by the time I got there that there was a couple teams that wanted to trade for me. And honestly, like the way things ended in Germany, I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't really been playing goalie since I left. I was a bit overweight, and I just didn't. But the same thing at the same time, like the best thing that happened in that experience is, in my mind, I sort of became liberated. Like all the stuff that happened, all the garbage, all the like disappointments was like thrown out the door because it felt like this was just a new lease on life. And if it didn't work out, oh well, no big deal.
Yeah, you put less pressure on yourself, right?
Yeah. And I didn't have to pay for a pregnancy. So like we were good to go. No matter what happened on top of that, it was all gravy. So I went out there, and I think the first week it could not have gone any better. And the interesting thing is Bill Gaudette was actually on fire. I remember watching him play, and I was thinking, this guy is having an unbelievable season. And all of a sudden, the way that Lloyd Sand describes it is like he started to feel me breathe on the back of his neck. And Dax, do you remember what happened? I almost feel like you would tell it better.
Refresh my memory. I don't. It's not
All right.
coming.
So maybe it's not going to happen. So anyways, we were in great playoff position, and the team was playing really well. So there's definitely not going to be any changes, but the coach told me right away that he really liked what he was seeing, and he really had to give it a hard think. But the team was winning. But then things just started to happen in the game. And even though we're getting results, it was like, that was a bit iffy. And so twice, Hans said I was going to play. And at the very end, he decided to keep Bill in. And so I didn't really think it was going to work out. But then something happened in New England. And the tough part is at the end of the season. There was literally 4 games left going into the playoffs. And he just pulled the trigger and he put me in there. And I didn't know what was going to happen. But 6 minutes in or 7 minutes into the Toronto game, Ryan Johnson scored from like 35 yards out, hit an absolute rocket. And I thought, all right, that's it. Short-lived. Everyone's career is done. I just conceded from like 35 yards. So fortunately, that was one of the more brilliant games of Thierry. I think he had like a hat trick. We won 4-1. So people just kind of forgot about that. And I bought some more time. And then things just started to really fall into place and go well. And I played really well in the playoffs, saved the PK, made some big saves in the DC series. But then the really fortunate part of all of it is Hans got fired. And with the new regime, they were only watching the playoffs. And since I played well in the playoffs, they said, okay, we're going to go with this guy next year. So that's how it started.
Nice. I actually have one massive question for you about your time at Rebels. I know we spoke about like the disappointing playoff runs and some of the losses, but I have one controversial question for you. When you guys played us, 2017 US Open Cup final.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the only final that you guys have been in, correct?
Yeah.
And I know Mira was starting.
No, wait. They made it to MLS Cup. They made it to MLS Cup one.
That's right. I mean, during your time there, I guess.
Okay, yeah. No, you're right.
So Mira was playing all the Open Cup games, which is typical of a lot of teams. You'll play the second goalie in the Open Cup matches. But obviously when you get to the finals or maybe even the semis at that point, some teams will put the starter back in. And so I know that there was like some conversation whether, you would jump in. At least from our side, we didn't know if Mira was going to play or if you were going to play. And so how did that go? Did you, were you conformed to, being on the bench? Did you want to start that game? Were there any conversations? How did that go down?
I think as a competitor, you always want to play. I think you always think that by you being a part of the lineup, you give the team the best chance to win. And that's the way it should be for a competitor. I will say that I have a really good relationship with Ryan, and he's probably one of the closest guys or one of the guys I'm closest to. And I just respect the way that he's always handled himself as a professional. So when the team went on that run in 2017, I was conflicted because I know deep down there was a chance that I wasn't going to be a part of any of it. And yet I had to find a way, not only as a teammate, but as one of the leaders on the team to help in any way possible. And so Jesse had several conversations on the stretch with me about what he's thinking and how he wants to do it. And I think we had a conversation that was actually pivotal to the decision. And he would never disclose how pivotal it was, but I think it was actually probably the most important conversation. And I just said that I laid it out how I feel, but I think in the best interest of being the best teammate possible, this is the right thing to do. And so I'm going to be honest and say that it was never easy. It was never something that I could just be like, oh, I'm totally fine with, because I wanted to be on the field. But just from a human standpoint, from a teammate standpoint, there was never a doubt in my mind that this was the right decision. And so when I shared that with Jesse, that was before the semi. And I think at that moment on, even though there was still indecision on what was going to happen, he at least felt confident that there wasn't going to be a blowback from me. Yeah. And so when you look at the game, regardless,
I know there was still indecision leading up into that final, because I remember, I literally remember that week of practice, him still not knowing who he was going to start. Yeah, he was like completely conflicted.
And I'll say, I'll say one thing in a bit, but I think if I put myself in that position, and it's hard because, goalies are so different than field players. You as a field player, you could potentially not start a game. You can come in off the bench, whatever. But I think as much as like I respect what you said. I think if it's me, I'm saying what I think we should do is have me play. But if you decide to have, the other guy play, I'm not going to create a problem. I think that would be my thought process. If I think that, which I'm assuming that you did, you give the team the best chance to win, because I mean, that's what it's all about at the end, right? You're not playing. It's not an individual sport. You're not here to try and, make this guy or that guy happy. You're trying to, get your team to win. And so if you offer that opportunity in a game that, you're not going to see, how many finals can you really expect to be in? I think that would be my thought process. And then the only other thing I'll say is, I've always wondered, actually, in that game, would we have won had you played? Because, I mean, Mira's a good goalie, but you might have saved that first goal, the Latif header. I think it's a tough one. It's not like an easy save, but it's a tough one. And the second goal is also one where the defense, I mean, Daniel kind of runs in on his own, but at the same time, like, Mira's unsure whether to come out. Maybe he comes out too late, or maybe he shouldn't come out at all. So, 2 plays that solidified our win.
Benny, let me look at it from a different side of it. So yeah. I agree with what you're saying, and I think Luis handled it about as well as you can handle a situation like that. But if you look on the flip side of that, and especially if you look at how Red Bull, how highly they rate Ryan, right? Because if you think about it, Ryan was actually drafted in
2012. He was the starter in 2012, and
Ryan was the starter in 2012 as a rookie, and he actually played really well. He was like crushing it, playing amazing.
I remember
leading the rookie of the year race, all that nonsense. But then he got injured, and not just like a little injury. He had like double hip surgery. So like one hip he had a torn labrum, I think, and then he had to get the other side worked on. He was out for like a year. Yeah. But then, Luis comes in, and Luis is Luis. Everybody knows the legend that Luis is at Red Bull. But I think there was this thing at Red Bull that they always had the utmost faith in Ryan. And so if you're going to give a guy a few Open Cup games and he does well and the team is winning, right, and then you get to the semifinal and final, I think what you said is very pertinent, that when you get to that point, it's all about winning and you want the best player to be there. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think they viewed Ryan and Luis is kind of like 1A and 1B. Like, Luis is who he is, and we trust Luis to the utmost, but we also trust Ryan. And if we pull Ryan out of the final after he got us here right now, we could lose him for the season mentally. And I think Ryan's a super professional guy. I'm not saying that he would have dogged it or even shown his frustration, but if you pull him out for the final, after all the things that he accomplished to get them there, I think that mentally that will really, really wear on a guy. And so I think that maybe went into it a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I think, and look, I'm not saying that I'm right and that you're wrong or anything like that. I'm just saying that if I'm a coach and I have that decision to make, and this is obviously, I'm not the coach, so I'm not Jesse. I'm not there to make that decision. But if I actually think that Luis is, whether it's
your best chance to win, yeah,
and gives me the best chance to win, and Mira, whether it's 50% worse or 5% worse, but if there's any level there, I'm sticking with my best player. And if my second goalie or second player, whoever I don't start, isn't mentally strong enough to accept that and then like still continue to be a good player, then I mean that's the loss that I'm gonna have to take. But I'm gonna give my team the best chance to win.
That's why I think one part that shouldn't be dismissed is if it was another goalie, I don't know if it's as easy a decision for Jesse. But since Jesse knows me as not only a player, but as a person, he knew that he was dealing with something completely different. And I definitely in no way made the decision any easier because I do believe that he thought that.
Yeah.
But I think he also understood that when it comes to anything, I try to look at the bigger picture. And in this case, I'm not the bigger picture. The team's the bigger picture. And more in focus is this guy has waited patiently and served his dues and has played really well in this run up to the tournament. And maybe that's even a part of me, if we're going to talk about it existentially, that maybe struggles. Like, you watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, you see that this guy is like an absolute killer. He's a mercenary, he's ruthless, and it's what made him so good. And this is why he is the legend that he is. And I think also for me, I think that's why I am the person I am. And maybe this is why I'm not MLS Cup champion yet, is there's always this part of me that is considering other people. And in this situation, I was considering Ryan and I was considering the team. But
Yeah.
more than anything, I'll be honest, I was considering Ryan. And I think when I was conflicted is because that's the part of me, like the competitive part with an ego that says like, no, like this is the way it should be. But then the human part is the more sensible part. And that's what I am first. And in this case, that's what allowed me to sort of navigate it, because it was, to say it was a difficult situation is an understatement. It might've been the most difficult situation I ever experienced at Red Bull. And that includes my exit.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
That's actually good that you led to that. So you had all these great years at Red Bull, and we can go through all the accolades and, 3 supporter shields and maybe the most loved Red Bull of all time next to Dax. And maybe you and Dax are 1A and 1B, to be honest.
I'm pretty sure Brad trumps both of us, but that's a different.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah. So you Brad, so Brad too. Anyway, so your exit with Red Bull, what was it, what you pictured? What did you imagine? I know we've had lots of talks. You envisioned living in New Jersey pretty much through your working life. So just kind of talk about that.
No, the reason I sigh is there was so much that happened, and I just don't think I can talk about all of it. Like that's like, and it sounds sort of trite to say that, but bro, there were so many conversations going on behind the scenes, and all I could say is there was real consideration to retiring, and part of the retiring had to do with what was next in my life. And then as a season, and that wasn't easy to deal with, like mourning your career in a sense, like knowing that it might be done. And yet, as we were getting closer to the end, some strange stuff is happening, and you're sort of, putting the dots together, and you're like, wait, hold on a sec. This might not play out the way I thought it would. And since I'd already gone through the mental exercise of sort of the exit, I think it put me in a good place to actually exit.
But did you feel like you were gonna probably, like, if you go back to, so like, because I went through this year, right? And just to share quickly, like what I went through, I knew that if I were to keep playing, there would have to be one of two things. Either some team that I'm not really that interested in going to would have to pay me a lot of money for me to move and change my family to play one more year, or it'd have to be a team that I really want to be at, which was really dwindled to 2 teams, whether it was Sporting KC or LAFC. Like those are the 2 teams that I felt like, okay, I'll play one more year, and see what I can, muster in one more year. But if that didn't happen, then I was leaning towards retirement. And so, like, what was your mindset towards the end of the season or close to the end of the season when things are approaching? Like, were you more towards, let me go find a team that I want to keep playing for? Was it like, I want to stay here? Like Sal said, I know you wanted to, retire in New Jersey and that kind of thing, and kind of work for the club, or what was kind of your mindset there before, everything went down?
So my mindset was really actually looking forward to the next chapter. But it was definitely within this idea that it would bring me back to Red Bull. And when I say the next chapter, it could have been a variety of different things. It could have been working at different departments at the club and learning the business of it all, and hopefully continue to ascend that ladder. It could have been working with some contacts in the city that I developed over the years to just learn something completely different, but then bring it back to soccer. I was exploring a lot of it, and none really more than after I realized that there was a chance I wasn't going to come back. But then the thing that changed all of it is I went to lunch with a friend in Bridgewater. I met him down there, and he brought some really nice, fresh perspective to all of it. And that was the day before free agency started. So having that conversation was actually very enlightening to then go into free agency. But then the big part is I didn't know what to expect in free agency, and the amount of teams that called made me realize that, I think I need to keep playing. I didn't know what sort of demand was going to be out there for a 36-year-old goalkeeper. And I didn't know what sort of challenges were going to be out there. And I think on the first day, 12 teams called. So all of a sudden I thought, you know what? I don't think it's time. I don't think it's time for it to end. I could always go and do that later, but I want to see what what the next chapter looks
Luis,
like while I'm still playing soccer.
How many of those 12 teams that called were realistic in your mind that you would have actually wanted to go and play for?
That's a really good question. I'd say 5. There were 5 that I really, and see, that's cheating because you and I already had this conversation.
Care to divulge that?
You and I had that conversation on the day that it happened. So,
to be honest, I do remember that conversation, but I don't remember the teams. I'm being dead serious.
Yeah.
I think I remember one of them, but I'm curious how.
Max, which one do you remember? Just like, no, it was refreshing. Like, guys, I mean, I haven't been recruited like that since college. So
that's a funny little note from your story, because I wasn't certain yet what I was going to do. I sent some emails out when free agency was going to open either the day of or the night before or whatever, saying that, I was wondering, who would be interested. And I sent it to several of the teams that I was interested in. I probably sent it to like 10 teams or something to kind of see, what would happen. Yeah. And I thought once I didn't get any callbacks, I was thinking like, well, I guess maybe free agency hasn't started, but apparently it started for you.
He got contacted by 12.
All the emails that I sent
got ignored by 12 teams.
I was pleasantly surprised. I honestly thought I'd get contact from like 3 teams.
Right.
And they seemed pretty serious. So it went quickly though. I'm curious if I had to do it again, if I waited a couple weeks to see what that would have been like. But the tough part is once I went down to Miami, it's like game over. I spoke to the other teams because they knew I was flying down there. And they just asked for a conversation before I said yes to anything. And so I continued the conversation, but the biggest thing was flying down there to see the training facility under construction, to see the stadium under construction, to speak to Paul and to Nikki, and to really just see what everything that this thing was about. For me, it was as long as there was a number in my mind, as long as they could get to that, this was going to be the best experience for me from a growth perspective. And thus far, I can confirm that it has been. Now, COVID-19 has definitely added to that, but nonetheless, we're really happy here, and I think it was the right decision.
I was going to ask one question real quick, so then you can do. So Dax tried to finagle his way into getting some of those names. So I'm going to ask this: Miami won. Who took second place in the Luis Robles sweepstakes?
I would say the teams that. There was a team that I held dear to my heart, and then there was a couple teams that were ready to win, and so it was a no-brainer to go there. But
what were the teams?
The thing that Miami was really like screaming at me is like, you just get to be a part of the beginning. Like you get to be a part of so many firsts, and to me that was too much to pass on.
So you're not giving me the number 2 team? The team that almost got you?
No. And there was a team that came in with a big number, and I was like, I just can't go there. Like it's not going to happen.
Was it in the United States of America?
That, like the way you're saying that, it feels like it's either in Canada or New York City. New York City, they have Sean John, so I wouldn't imagine that's them.
No chance it was NYCFC. No chance.
That's just a guess. Would be
Montreal.
Yeah, maybe Toronto or Vancouver. I mean, realistically, it could have been all 3.
It wasn't New York City.
I knew that.
We'll just keep guessing here and let us know when we get it right.
Okay, well, Luis, so obviously you choosing, you kind of went into it a little bit with Miami. You obviously put in a lot of stock into like what team you would want to be at when you're done playing. I mean, I know, you have aspirations to work within an organization. Was that probably the leading factor to choosing what team you wanted to play for?
It was definitely part of it. And they were really wise in a sense to bring that up. They said like, look, we need a lot, like we're an expansion team. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. Even if in the first year you just feel like you do want to step away and you don't want to play anymore, like we still need bodies. We need soccer minds. There's going to be a lot of stuff. Now, I will say this. On the heels of my New York Red Bull experience, I took everything at face value. But I've never met Paul before, and I've never met Nikki before. And I just appreciated the directness in their conversation. You can tell when you're talking to someone, you're like, I don't know if the whole truth is there, and I'm not even sure if what you're saying is true, or you just are telling me what I want to hear.
I can
These
say
guys
this.
in no way present themselves that
A
way.
lot of GMs don't get good reputation from players just based on their job.
Mhm.
And while Paul was at Atlanta, everyone loved him. All the
And
players
that's what I
loved
kept
him.
hearing.
And
That's what I
so,
kept hearing.
I mean, if your reputation is like that as a GM, usually you stay pretty true to what you say.
Yeah. And
I've got one more question for you for your career before we jump into Ike's interrogation presented by Dax McCarty today.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it wouldn't fit in like chronologically, so it's kind of at the end here. But your national team career that we kind of talked about a little bit,
yeah,
and I think did you have 3 caps for the national team or three caps, right?
Mhm.
And so you've been one of the top goalies in MLS for a considerable amount of years. I know you won goalkeeper of the year 2015, but you've been in the conversation with a few other guys, but never really, got a legit chance. I know, American goalies are one of the strongest positions that we have, but did you think you deserve more of a look? Do you kind of look back on that and wish you had more, or were you satisfied, with what you achieved, or how does that, like, looking back on it, how do you see that?
I would say yes to all the above. I'd say yes to everything that you said. And yes, at different points in my career. I think early on, I was a bit shell shocked to get called in so quickly. And my first cap, the moment was bigger than I was ready for. But I also felt like when I got back to playing in Germany, I was playing at a really high level. And then, of course, when I came to Red Bull, I was part of the team that won in 13, and I was a very consistent piece. And in 14, I actually, if you ask me what was my best year at Red Bull performance wise, it was 14, because it was a team that was up and down. There was no consistency to anything that we put on the field. And I just remember every game making a save that kept us in it. Every game.
Do you remember
So
who the goalies were in the national team at that point?
I mean, it's always been the same people, right? It's been Tim, Nick, and Brad.
Okay.
And so I thought going into that off season that I'd get a look. At least I get called into January camp. It didn't work out, but then I got called into a couple of January camps. And January camps, you guys have been to it. It's they're different. But I think more than anything, my position's different. And it's not one of these situations that you play one game and then see what happens. I've always looked at Manuel Neuer and Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. And I remember Neuer's debut, and I remember Ter Stegen's debut. They did not go well. And I even remember Ter Stegen's first few games as a German national team keeper. They didn't go well. But that's a position that requires a decent little run. But it's also the position that probably doesn't happen. So unfortunately, that's just part of it. I've come to terms with it, because I also think, looking back at my career, midway through, I don't know if I could have looked at my career and felt validated if I didn't win anything. And yet maybe it's not fair, because I have, won 3 shields and I have won some individual awards. But the thing that eludes me is MLS Cup champion. And I just think, okay, maybe my career it's not validated because I'm not MLS Cup champion. And yet somehow here I am at 36, and maybe I'm just justifying. But I do feel that I brought value to the organization that I was with for a long time. And really every organization I've gone to. And now I look at it differently. Instead of just results, it's like, how did I leave the place? Did I leave it better than I found it? Yeah. And as I apply that to Miami, I'm hoping to do the same. But actually, even in a bigger picture, how do I apply that to the league? And I really think as I consider the next part of my life, whenever that is and whatever it is, I want to continue to be a strong advocate or ambassador for this sport in this country, because there's some real stuff going on, but there's also some real problems that need solutions. And so that's also allowed to let me deal with the very last part, that what you said is, okay, maybe it didn't work out, but I still got 3 caps. And those are 3 caps that they can never take away from me. And when I say that I look at my career and I did this and this and that, I could also say I represent the national team. So it is what it is. And maybe it's just an older, wiser person, or maybe someone that's just bringing the bar down a little bit when it comes to measuring my career.
Luis, 10 years from now, ideally, what is Luis Robles doing?
What I just said. And I don't know what that role is, but working with the PA, working with the Red Bulls, working with just so many different minds in soccer. I want to be a part of making it better. I want to be a part of bringing it to the next level. And I want to do it in a way that really considers a lot of different things. And I'm not saying that the people there aren't doing that. I just feel like I can be an asset to whatever it is that I'm a part of.
I said that was going to be the last question. I forgot I had one more, but I'm gonna let you off the hook with this one because I'm not gonna ask you guys to divulge all of your tactics right now. I know that there's conversations being had whether we're going to have a season this year. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Do you think there will be some sort of season this year in MLS?
It's definitely my hope. I mean, this is such a crazy situation, and the time that we're living in there's no way you could have prepared for it. And so me being the optimist is hoping that there will be a season. And I know that there's advanced talks of neutral site, and that's a real possibility. And there's a part of me that hopes that we can figure out afterwards, and that we can buy some time, and we can either get closer to a vaccine or herd immunity or whatever is going to be required. But I also will say this: there's some real challenges. There's some really real challenges that I've never considered. I've never even thought of. And as we're having this dialogue with the league, I'm just trying to take into consideration how this affects each player. And I'm not just saying the guys at the top. I'm not just saying the guys at the bottom. But when you look at the entire player pool, it consists of over 700 people that have completely different situations, and they're all going to be affected by this. So how do we make it in a way that at least allows them to put their best foot forward, whether that's on the field or in the way that they provide for their family?
Yeah, fair enough. No one knows what's going to happen. This is unprecedented times for sure. All right. Well, with that, we're going into precedented times, and that is what we all crave at the end of the show here. And today is going to be Ike's Interrogation presented by Dax. And so take it away, dude. Your seat's about to get hotter, and don't try and finagle your way with some political answers on this one.
The rule is rules, right? I have to answer the question, but I get one plead the fifth.
You get one plead the fifth out of the 5 questions. If you choose to answer all 5, then start thinking of a question. You can ask any one of us 3, Dax included, a question that we must answer truthfully.
Okay.
So if you answer all 5, you will be able to ask that. Go ahead, Dax. He's all yours, bro.
All right, Luis. I hope we're still friends after this, but just remember, a lot of these questions are from the man, the myth, the legend, Ike Opara. Okay? I may or may not have helped frame some of them, but let's just say that I don't think Mr. Diplomacy, Mr. Luis Robles over there is going to be able to get out of all these. Okay? There's quite a few fun ones in here that I'm really looking forward to.
You better save your plead the fifth.
Let's see. I'm going to come out of the gates hot. This is the hot seat. All right. You are Greg Beerhalter. You're the national team coach. And you need to take 3 goalkeepers to the World Cup. You need to name your starter, your backup, your third string keeper, and you're leaving one of these goalkeepers at home. So what are the positions and who are they? And I'm going to give you 4. Zach Steffen, Bill Hamid, Brad Guzan, Sean Johnson. Who's your starter? Who's your backup? Who's the third string? And who is not on that plane?
We're joking about coming in hot.
I think that's an easy one.
Not for a goalkeeper. Remember, Benny, they have the goalkeepers union.
Yeah, they have the goalkeepers union.
Look at this guy, dude.
I'm just trying to think if you're going to ask me another goalkeeper question.
No, there's no more goal. This is the only goalkeeper question.
I will say this is the only goalkeeper question.
This is the only goalkeeper question?
I would not plead the fifth to this one. I'm just
You only have to
that.
break the goalkeeper union one.
The first question is never the hardest.
The first question is never the hardest.
This is what Luis does. He asks these like underlying questions, and then we answer them for him, and he's just like analyzing everything, like debating whether or not to like.
This is an easy one. This is an easy one.
It's an easy one because Because you're retired, you can say whatever you want.
Nah, I've always said whatever I wanted.
Luis, listen. There's like 50 people that listen to this podcast. All right, you're gonna be fine.
I'm honest. I'm just gonna plead the fifth.
Oh my God. I can't believe you're pleading the fifth on the first question. You're going to plead the fifth on all the questions at this point.
Maybe
my man Aiko Para is smiling somewhere right now.
Maybe.
All right.
At least we don't have to answer any questions today.
All right, Luis, let's go. Question number 2, and this one is a
doozy.
A doozy. I don't know how you're going to get through this one, but I want you to rank these MLS/team executives in order of your favorite to least favorite. Okay. I'm going to give you 4.
Do I know them all?
Oh, you know them.
Just ask. Just
Absolutely.
You absolutely know them all.
Okay.
Don Garber, Ali Curtis, Dennis Hamlet, Paul McDonough.
Well, the easy one, the least favorite is our boy Dennis Hamlet. Not too worried about answering that one. So then there's Ali Curtis, there's Don Garber, and Paul. Well, I mean, the reason that I came here is because of Paul. I mean, part of the reason I came here is because I was really impressed with the way that Paul communicated with me. So he's definitely at the top. But Ali, I liked Ali. I liked Ali a lot. So the 3 guys that are left, Don, Ali, and Paul, like I actually have great respect for. And I know that from a player side, we're supposed to like look at the enemy and not like Don, but actually all my interactions with him have been quite pleasant. I know when he's on the other side, it's completely different, but we're just talking about personal interaction. So for these 3 guys, it has been really good. And Ali always gave me a new deal. Like he literally always gave me a new deal.
He should be at the top. No, but
that's the tough part is like which 3 is at the top. You know, like Don, I don't know that much about, so it's almost easy to make him 3. And
yeah, you can preface it however you want. So I mean, it has to do with all, people that you've dealt with more. I mean, it's however you want to deal with it.
Yeah, like I mean, Don has been very limited in my interaction, so it's 3. Number 2 would be between Paul and Ali, and though everything that I've seen from Paul has been great, and I respect him, it's still been limited as well. So I would say he's number 2, and Ali is number 1. Ali and I had some very difficult conversations, but I always felt like he was straight with me.
All right, I that's kind of how I thought that would go. And
I respect that answer, though. I like that answer.
Yeah, that's exactly how I thought that would go. You were honest.
By the way, I had a interaction with Ali Curtis. I don't think I'd ever met him before, but the one game that I worked for Fox Soccer, for Fox Fox. Wait, what's the name of the channel now? Fox Sports or Fox Soccer?
Fox Sports.
I'm like blanking now.
Fox Soccer since like 2005.
Fox Soccer.
Yeah, but it
channel.
used to be. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Well, anyways, Fox. I worked for Fox.
Getting a job with Fox anytime.
Anyways, I worked with Fox. I'm just gonna leave it at just the big name Fox instead of going into all the channels that they have. But anyways, and I worked in Toronto.
FS1 now, just so you know.
FS1, thank you. That's easier. FS1. I work with FS1. Wonderful group of people, by the way. Work with FS1, and we did Toronto, Atlanta last year, the Eastern Conference Finals, and I was in the room when we interviewed certain players, and we interviewed Ali, and so I can. Through my one conversation with him, I can attest that he's a very, straightforward, honest guy and gives his answers as best as he can.
Mm-hmm.
Ali wouldn't be number 1 on my list because he went to Duke, but I'll leave it at that.
Is Ali the same technical director that wouldn't give you an extra $5,000, Sal?
Yep. That's like every technical director.
Penny pinching. All right, Luis, well done on that one. Okay, next question. You get to choose 2 center backs who you've played with at Red Bull to play in front of you in MLS Cup, the proverbial MLS Cup. Who are your 2 center backs?
I played with them at Red Bull, so that's the stipulation.
You played with all these guys, as did I.
He's going to give you the names.
I'm going to give you the names.
Oh, okay.
You can only pick 2. Okay, so your MLS Cup, the guys that you're going to count on to be the rocks in front of you, lead you to that elusive trophy. Obviously, your 2 preferred center backs that you want to play in front of you in the biggest game ever. Tim Parker, Emerson Olave, Matt Miazga, Damian Perenelle, Aurelian Collin, or Rafa Marquez.
I noticed that you didn't name one.
Yeah, we left him out on purpose.
Important one.
We left out Aaron Long on purpose.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't really know Rafa. I played 2 games with him. So he's out.
I figured that was just kind of to throw his name in there.
And Damian, remember his trial? When he came on trial, he was like, it had to be one of the greatest on trial performances in history. And then he just never played. Like, he never got a chance to play. I don't know if he was hurt. He just never played. And then in 2015, Jesse gave him a shot, and he was unbelievable. He was a huge reason why we were so good that year.
Agreed.
And so, like, 2000, Damian Pernell's got to be up there. Olave, great guy. Congratulations on winning USL.
He's their coach, right?
Yeah, he was their coach. He won the USL championship. But I also think his best years with RSL. Right. I think at Red Bull, those were the tail end. He was dealing with a lot of injuries. I don't even think he trained most of the time. I'm pretty sure he just played.
Cashing checks, dude.
Yeah. Matt Miazga was there for a year. He was an unfinished product. Like, he was good, but I think part of the reason why he was so good is our system and Damian. But obviously his ceiling is unreal. But honestly, the guys I'd pick is, if I could say it this way, 2015 Damian Perenelle and Tim Parker.
Okay.
Nice.
I like that answer, Luis. A little bit of a curveball there. I do remember Damian. He came on trial. He was great. The only guy that I saw on trial ever at Red Bull that was better was Mike Grella, the legend.
Remember how bad Bradley Wright Phillips' trial was?
Awful. But Mike Grella's trial was incredible. The guy scored like 12 goals in preseason. It was amazing.
So good that Ali Curtis offered him a little minimum after the end of the year.
Hold on. It's even better. He offered him the salary that eventually became the minimum because the CBA got ratified.
It's crazy.
So, like, he thought he got a decent deal because he looked at the year before, and it's like an upgrade. But with 2015 being like the year we negotiated the salaries, or the CBA, the salary for the minimum went up, and he realized he was on minimum, but he didn't count as a minimum player.
Ali already knew that, dude. He already knew what was going to happen.
Come on, dude. This guy.
Wait, so I'm bummed out that Ike isn't on right now, because Damian Perenelle, 2015, you said, right?
Yeah.
So the first game of 2015, I believe, was against us. And I did Damian Perenelle down the sideline and crossed it into Ike, where he scored on a header.
Yeah, I was trying to think if Ike had scored on me. I couldn't remember. There's so many people that scored on me.
He has.
He scored on that header where Damian Perenelle had a rough start to the season. He must have improved after he played against
he was great,
Sporting
dude.
Kansas City.
He was great. He hurt his knee. Was it in the playoffs, Luis?
Yeah, first round against DC.
He hurt his knee in the playoffs, and it was tough sledding after that. But
so then at 16, he wasn't. He was a shelf of himself. He was recovering, and
maybe that 8-second goal doesn't happen if Damian's playing left center back.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens.
All right, Luis. Good answer. Damian Perenelle, Tim Parker. Damian kind of threw me there. That's a good answer. All right. Question number 4, I believe it is. And have fun with this one. I want you to rank these coaches. You can use any method you want. Doesn't matter. Rank these coaches from best to worst in your mind. Mike Petke, Jesse Marsh, Chris Armas, Diego Alonso, and I'm throwing in a curveball here. I know he was only an assistant, but he was kind of like an assistant head coach, Robin Fraser. So,
I thought you were going to say Wally. I thought you were going to say Woliak.
So your 5 coaches from best to worst: Mike Petke, Jesse Marsh, Chris Armas, Robin Fraser, Diego Alonso, your current coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fair to Robin. He wasn't a head coach, and he's not a goalkeeper coach, so it's not like we had much interaction in him coaching. So that's easy to put him at the bottom, not because he's not good, but I mean, I don't know.
I think we all know Robin's a pretty damn good coach.
Yeah, but I mean,
people in Colorado love him. All my ex teammates that I had for about 4 months, they tell me that he's a really good coach over there.
But hey, this is Luis's hot seat. Any justification he wants, and that's a good.
I mean, whatever to take the heat off of me.
All right, so Robin's at the bottom.
So Robin Frazier's the worst.
Robin Frazier's the
I
worst.
could easily say that I have zero head coach experience with Robin Frazier. Let's see. The number one for me is Jesse. I mean, I just think I think the world of Jesse. I think a lot of people feel that way, whether or not you agree with him personally or his behavior on the sideline. I think we can all admit that he's a pretty damn good coach. So for me, he's number one.
I feel like that was targeted at me. And yes, I agree with you, Luis. He's a damn good coach.
Yeah. All right. I really like Diego. It feels a little incomplete because it's only been a few months, but I could see why this guy's won so many trophies. So I'm thinking I have Pecky still. I have Chris Armas. Okay. Yeah. So for me, it would be Jesse. It'd be Diego, Chris Armas, Pecky, Frazier.
Okay. I thought that's kind of the way I thought it would go, but that's.
Yeah. I mean, dude, in all fairness to Mike, like, come on, we know how those 2 years went. Like, bro, it was crazy. He had to deal with so many different personalities. Could you even say that he had a real opportunity to be like the head coach that he could be? I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Benny, I promise you, if we had a reality TV show, we would have knocked it out of the park that year. 13 and 14, the amount of internal drama that happened that no one would know about. Bro, it would have beat.
But Pecky doesn't mind some internal drama. I mean, he created some at Salt Lake as well. So, some good. I can't speak to that, dude. I mean, obviously, I'm not on the inside there, but there were some funny press conferences. He is funny in the press conferences. It was against when we played against them. I think we tied him 1-1 in Salt Lake, and it was the printer. Remember the printer?
Yeah.
Like he like took out a printer and like showed a picture of people holding people's necks and like this, and somebody got a red card and somebody didn't get it, and it was like I would have had more pictures, but the printer broke. It was amazing, dude. So he's had some good press conferences.
Yeah, Pecky's a legend. But all right, Luis, I think we got one more. We're gonna get you off the hot seat with this. I think Ike would kill me if I didn't ask this question because it's not a fun one. It's not a fun one for me to read either. So here you go. You have to rank these Red Bull players in order of who deserved better from the club.
I love this one.
From first to worst. Okay.
Mm-hmm. You can just say Red Bull captains, probably.
Yeah. We're gonna go me, Sasha, you, Bradley Wright Phillips, or Aaron Long. And the context of that one was the whole transfer saga to England, and assuming he really wanted to go and they didn't let him go. So
I mean, I don't know anything about it. I think there's so many moving pieces to that. Can you even like really comment on that? Like
just from your own knowledge that you know in your head.
I don't know that. I didn't ask him. Like
not with Aaron Long. I'm saying to answer the question for so maybe the knowledge you have for all of them.
He didn't deserve shit then, according to Luis.
Yeah, I guess it could be translated that way. No, he obviously deserves every opportunity, but I mean, you're talking about 4 guys that got dismissed. The way I see it, he's still there, so he's on the bottom. You know, like
for sure. That's an easy one.
He may still get a chance to get sold. You know?
I thought you were going to say dismissed.
He'll definitely get a chance.
He gets the armband.
He'll definitely get a chance for getting dismissed. I think at the top. I think at the top is definitely you, Tax. I'll be honest. I unfortunately had to endure that with you personally. And
you did. Oh, that's a fun fact for everyone. I was in January camp.
We were all there. Me, you, and Sash. Me and Sash were roommates.
Right. And me and Luis were roommates. And Luis was like, and we were both like, oh yeah, Jesse's here. We're both grabbing a coffee with him at different times, whatever. And I think, did I go first, Luis? I don't know. Yeah. I went down first to meet Jesse. I had no clue what was going on. And it happened. I came back up, told Luis, and it was just like,
I'm going to admit something on air here.
Right? Oh, here we go. You heard it.
Breaking news.
I'm going to admit something on air. In my mind, I had an idea why you were going down there. And the reason I said that is because that week there had been several conversations. And And Sasha and I adamantly said that this is, I don't know why you're considering this. There's definitely other options. And there was a period where I thought we'd convinced him. And then there was another period where like, I have no idea. Sasha and I were coming back in an Uber and we're like, we have no idea what Jesse's going to do. But when he called you in that sense, in that moment with everything that was going on, I just had a feeling.
Yeah. And like, I think as a player, I mean, you always kind of have a little small inkling. I mean, I definitely knew that it was a possibility leading up to that whole offseason. There were rumors swirling about like me, Felipe, Sasha. All three of us kind of could be on the block. All three of us could be traded. They have Sean Davis and Tyler Adams coming through. So like, they need to make room, whatever. So like it was definitely in the back of my head, but just like hearing the words, it's like so difficult to hear in that moment, right? And so then whatever, man, just being roommates with you, you really helped me get through that. So I'm glad that I made number one on your list.
There were several things that we had to get through. That was a tough January camp.
I wasn't obviously part of the team, but me being with Sash, I actually heard a lot of this stuff as well. And I think Sash thought Felipe was going to get traded. And so I'm sure like, the conversations that, you had with him, Luis, I don't know if, that came through as well, but, Sasha's, I think, really close to Jesse. I don't know if as close as you guys or closer or whatever, but, I think that he definitely thought Felipe was going to be the one that was eventually going to get traded. So it was definitely a shock to Sash when it happened. I remember that.
When I think about this question, it's not as hard as maybe people would think it would be, because I think what we all learned through all of it is, I mean, the business is brutal. Like, I think if you're in it long enough, you have to count your blessings that you've been able to be in the game that long. And I think for all of us, we can say that it has allowed us and afforded us a way to provide for our family in a very positive way. And so like there's not a lot, even with the way it ended with Red Bull, there isn't any bitterness towards me. Like there's no extra motivation to want to beat them. Because when I look at the 8 years, it's like, dude, I told you how I started. And for it to go the way that it did, yeah, like it sucked, because in my mind I had this romantic idea that I'd end up there and my family would stay there, but that's life.
But you still put Dennis Hamlet at the bottom of the execs list.
But that's not for that decision. I mean, that's not.
It couldn't have helped him. Let's just say that it couldn't have helped him.
All right, so Luis, you got me on top for deserving more. Thank you.
And Aaron, because the guy's still at the club.
Aaron's on the bottom, so now you got you, Brad, and Sash.
Yeah, and I'd put myself above Aaron, because at the end of the day, like they let me be a free agent. I asked not to get traded. I asked not to go through that whole ordeal, because look, you got traded right before the season started. Though it was January camp, Sasha was like held on to forever. But I would put Brad over Sasha, because the way they handled Sasha's deal, he got paid. Right? They sort of let him figure out where he wanted to go. He chose a situation where they were willing to pay him quite a bit more than he was making at Red Bull, where I don't know Brad's number. I'm not going to ask Brad's number, but I can't imagine that's the case with him going to LA. And of course, last year was a difficult year. So they could have handled our situations better, but dude, it's part of the business. I don't think anyone's immune to it.
And it's not just part of the business. It's just part of Red Bull's DNA, I would say. Like, that's just how ruthless they are. And when it comes to guys that get a little bit older.
Sports, like, I mean, I think that narrative exists there because they've done it like consistently. But if you examine every team, they let go a player that was important.
Yeah, but I'll say this. I think that Red Bull
in consecutive years.
Yeah. But Red Bull in general, like, has a global philosophy of having young players and selling players and that kind of thing. And so I even know from a perspective of like a free agent myself and knowing other guys that are free agents, like they won't look for older guys. I mean, there's very few players. I know a guy that's actually still a free agent that I think Chris Armas was. This is hearsay. I mean, this is what I heard from another guy, but that Chris Armas was really hoping to get, but I don't think Red Bull's willing to take him because he's too old. So there's definitely that difficulty with how Red Bull wants to pursue their players at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years at Red Bull, Giuseppe Rossi was training with us, and this guy was the best player on the field. And I know that he has his injury history, but still, he could have helped us. And every time we went in there and we asked them to consider signing, they're just like, no, he's too old. They have a philosophy, and you have to respect it because it's allowed them to be successful. And at least, if anything, they know what player they're looking for. Like so many teams in MLS still, like you don't know what their identity is. You don't really know what it is that they're trying to be or who they want to be. It's very obvious there, whether or not it's to a fault. At least they have clarity.
Yeah.
Well, Luis, congrats, buddy. I think you're off.
Dude, I'm telling you, the hardest one was the first one.
But I did make you plead. Pretty happy about that. Ike should be proud too.
Yeah, well done, Luis. You're off the hot seat. You were able to go through. You only played it once.
Your way out of it.
But at least we don't have to answer any of your tough questions. So I think that's all we got for you guys. Got anything else?
That's good, man. Nice to see you.
Great quarantine beard, buddy. That's all I got for you.
Yeah, dude. Stay safe in quarantine. I hope that you and the union and MLS can figure out a way for us retired people to get to watch some games soon, because I miss it. But yeah, stay safe and all the best.
And we know you won't be talking about it on Fox.
FS1, bro. Stop it. We're going to have to edit that out now.
Hey, thanks for
by the way, say thank you to your wife for not allowing you to pursue that terrible career of real estate agency that Sal had to pursue for like a year or two.
Hey,
always
Sal,
come back to soccer, though.
Tell me about La Mesa. It was a decent place in San Diego.
La Mesa is a great place. Yeah. Why? Were you looking to? Yeah, it's a good place. Text me. No, but tell Kara and the kids I say hello. So
We'll do.
it's
All
nice
right,
to
so
see
we
you,
can
buddy.
officially edit the rest of this out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Luis. Talk to you later, buddy.
Thanks,
Thanks for being on.
Appreciate it.
Later.
Take care.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, Luis Robles, for coming on the podcast. That was, a lot of good stories from his time at Red Bull. I thought you had him, dude. I thought he was going to plead the fifth like 3 times. I thought we were going to get another Jovan Karofsky on the show.
I know, me too. And he threw me for a loop there with the Damian Paranel pick. That was like out of left field. I was like, whoa. But I do like Damian. He had
Thinking about it though, that year he was key to us. I mean, he was good playing out of the back. He was good in our system.
And the one thing you get with Luis is like he never will just give you an answer and then that's it. Like he will give you an answer and like 10 reasons why he decided that answer. So yeah, Luis always has a ton of substance. He's a good friend and he's a good dude. We'll
see him as the MLS commissioner in like 10 years from now or something. But anyways, as you guys know, you guys can stream our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Overcast. Keep emailing us at BennySalThePodcast@gmail.com and our social platforms on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I don't think we're on TikTok, are we? Somehow this showed up. Nino wrote TikTok on the thing that I read off.
Maybe we are.
But our hashtags are BSI the podcast and Ike's interrogation. And I want to thank Dax again for coming on the show and helping us out with Ike's interrogation. And I think that's all we got, dude. Go check out the podcast website, bsithepodcast.com. And like as always, we'd love to have you guys on our Patreon website as subscribers. If you guys are into that stuff, please join. That's all we got. Anything else, boys?
Oh, thanks, Dax. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Dax.
For having me on, boys. If you need me to fill in for Ike Moore, you know where to find me.
All right.
Yes, sir.
We'll take
all
you
right.
up
Thanks
on
a
that.
lot for showing up today, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.